Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Gruesome and Grotesque video. As always, I just do these videos randomly when I come across something that I read online or through my Google News app that I feel merits posting here on this playlist. Now, I've done this playlist for a good while now. I've done a good number of videos. Each time that I think I've come across the most gruesome one yet, all of a sudden there's a new one that definitely goes to another level. Such is the case with this absolutely just horrific, gruesome story involving what a man did to his grandmother that just truly makes you wonder if there really is a hell for certain people. Because what this guy did, that I'll read here in a few minutes, absolutely is just up there when it comes to the most horrific stories yet that I've talked about here on this playlist. But you're looking at a picture of him and of the circumstances involved, and it has to do with this. It's the story of Robert Keith Tincher III and how he apparently stuffed his grandmother's living body within a freezer and just left her there to die. I mean, this is absolutely just one of the most worst ways to die, and this happened to this grandmother by her own grandson. So here's essentially what occurred. Now, details are still coming out, and he's apparently already confessed to the police. I mean, you'll see more in a minute here as to with regards to this, but apparently this is what occurred. And again, no indications if he's pled guilty or not, so some of this stuff may be actually him still being innocent. But by the very same token, he has mentioned this stuff straight to the police, but a court will ultimately decide. But here's what they stated. Sometime last year, in fact, late last year, and this would have been sometime around, I think it was like the second quarter, like November, maybe even December of last year. It's hard to know because there's no exact dates, and until this guy provides more information, we have to go by at least some certain whereabouts. But sometime during that time period, it's theorized that he was living there in his grandmother's home. Again, his name was Robert Keith Tincher III, 29 years old, and he was living with his grandmother, whose name was Doris Cumming, and she was 82 years old. They lived in an area there in northwest Georgia. I don't know how long he was living there. Maybe it could have been a couple weeks, maybe it could have been years, who knows? But the idea was this, that sometime either November or December, that's when she was injured in a fall. And then when that happened, rather than him taking her to a hospital or somewhere else to get medical attention, he decided to keep her at home. Already, of course, that's the worst thing to do because at her age, 82 years old, you realize that something like that can be truly an emergency. But then what he did next, again, just goes so horrific. Rather than, let's say, finding something for her to be carried around in, maybe a wheelchair, maybe some other type of mobile device, maybe even something else that she could use as crutches or something along those lines. He stated, and again, this is him putting this on paper whenever he was talking to the police, at least you'll see in the police report here, that he wrapped her in some plastic and then started dragging her around the home. Again, I have no idea how long this was going on, but it couldn't have lasted too long because of just how horrible the situation would be. Imagine her being dragged around the house, one place to another, based on at least a house. It looks like it's a one-story place, so this would have been at least staying within the same level, but still, imagine being banged around the house, hitting walls, hitting corners, hitting appliances, and who knows what else. And in fact, he stated that on multiple occasions, he heard and saw her numerous bones break. So imagine how horrible that was for the grandmother. There she was, no indication of what her mental state was, but at least she would have been suffering in huge pain, not just from that fall, however severe it was, but now because of what he was doing when it came to this particular act, wrapping her in plastic and then dragging her around wherever she needed to go. This is just, again, horrific. But if you thought it stopped there, then it goes to this next level. At a certain point, he decided, in an almost truly evil act, he decided to take her and wrap her again in more plastic and then place her in their large freezer. And He even indicated, this was his direct words, that she was breathing when the freezer was locked. And then if you thought things got worse there, no. Apparently the act of him placing her in that freezer caused her back to break. I mean, when I read that story, when I read that particular line, that was it. This definitely tops anything and everything when it comes to this playlist, when it comes to just how gruesome and grotesque these acts are. I mean, he was tearing her around in that whatever type of makeshift type plastic bag, and then he was causing her bones to break on multiple occasions, and then he decided to stuff her in a freezer, lock it. But before that happened, she was breathing, she was alive, and the very act had broken her back. So there she was, now going to be locked, freezing in the cold dark the remaining moments of her life. Who knows how little or how long she lasted within that freezer, but it was going to be with a broken back. I mean, again, there is no level of just pure horribleness associated with the story. This truly tops everything. And he stayed in that house with her body in that freezer for several months, at least until just the other week. So there he was, nonchalantly living there in that home. There she was, slowly dying, probably within a day or several days. And then when that happened, then he was just not caring, just basically living there as is until the situation was found out. How it was found out was this: some of the relatives were apparently stating that they were concerned about her. They had not heard from her for a while, and so they thought that maybe she had moved. But then whenever they decided to do a wellness check at that location, then that's when they realized that no, there was going to be an issue there. But things took another turn because of this. Eventually, he decided to move the freezer away from the home into a storage unit. And then when that happened, that's when I guess that led to him revealing the whereabouts of her body. So in a kind of combination of the relatives wanting to do a welfare check and then him just revealing what had occurred, that's when the full story came out. And if you're wondering why he did this, why essentially he wanted to do this horrific act, he stated it all came down to this. Apparently, he was already on an arrest warrant back in 2018 because of terroristic threats against his wife. So he didn't want the police to find out what had happened first with his grandma's original injury, and then let alone, of course, anything else involving what had happened afterward with the broken bones, and then the final horrific act of putting her with a broken back into the actual freezer. So he just let it be. And then that's when later on, of course, he was now found, and then he's in jail as of this moment. So lots of information to share right now, but lots more information will happen afterward. I'll see what I can post later on too, whenever more news comes out in terms of the eventual court case and the results associated with it. And when that happens, then I'll give a brief update too. But again, isn't this just the most horrible, absolutely horrible thing associated with this type of situation? What a way to go for this poor grandmother living there with the grandson. First impression is that maybe she brought him on board because he needed a place to stay out of maybe some kindness, something along those lines, and then she was repaid this way. Interestingly enough, he stated that he did not ever want to cause any harm to her, that he was, that he loved her and that he was taking care of her, something along those lines. But obviously doing it this way, that says a whole other different thing associated with the situation. But again, more news is coming out later on, so I'll post an update afterward. But if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please let me know. And again, it's just baffling to the police because the police even stated that there was, quote unquote, no altercation or provocation leading up to these acts themselves. Everything seems to point again that this was just a situation where it just happened out of the blue almost when it came to that injury, and then everything else involving him just deciding to move things to another level. It just occurred much to the bafflement, obviously, of the grandma, but of the police too. And then that's where the situation is where it's at now. Just a horrible all-around news. Nobody wins in this case. And hopefully when he does go to prison or goes to court, there's something going to happen to him, like in terms of getting found guilty and then going to prison for this horrific act. But again, more information to come out soon. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.